And let's talk about inclusive education because it's been a subject that's dear to our hearts. Now, this conversation is made possible by the support of Star Ghana with funding from the UK Aid and the European Union as well. I've been joined by Kofi Asare. Chief, good morning. Thank you very much for your time.
Good morning, sir.
The conversation about inclusivity, and I want us to first of all look at Samuel Aboga-Zigli's story from the University of Cape Coast. We put up a story earlier about how he was having difficulty accessing his lecture halls. 1 year down the line, what has happened? Let's take a look at the story. When we return, we'll get into a conversation. Hannah Waji as well will join us over the phone line. Matilda Benyaga will also join us over the phone line. We'll have a comprehensive conversation about the including children with disability in our educational system.
Although there is an elevator in the Samjona Library at the University of Cape Coast, it was not always operational, and Samuel Aboga-Zigli had to go through the challenge of descending down to access ICT services. Now, the situation is quite different. The elevator has been fixed and my cameraman and I were able to use the facility. Samuel and others in his condition can now access both basement and upper floors of the university library as the elevator remains operational. He says his classes have also been arranged downstairs.
First of all, I would like to thank TV3 and Spirit Lab Foundation for making this thing possible for me. After the journey to the West, they have made sure everything is in place for me. My lectures, they have moved it from top floor to ground floor, where I'm able to access that place. I'm very glad about it.
Samuel reported late to school in the 2018-19 academic year, but according to him, management of the superannuation hostel arranged a suitable accommodation for him. His social life on campus has seen a dramatic improvement. He's now a member of the campus badminton team comprising of staff members and some students of the university.
From the journey to the West, I decided not to sit there to relax, and I have to find something to do, like do some games, and I've initiated myself in playing badminton, which is very good for me, and it has also motivated me to do extra. I'm a beginner, but I'm trying to make to the top, like praying for the national badminton, para badminton. I'll be glad if I get a call up to play for the national para badminton. The wheelchair is not okay for this game, so I'm pleading to the general public to come to my aid, get me a wheelchair which is meant for playing badminton, and I think it will improve my confidence and it will improve my game too.
The stigma has reduced, with more people embracing him for who he is, making him gain more confidence. But Samuel needs a proper wheelchair to enable him negotiate his movement in the game and to also move around with ease. Although the university is doing its best to make life comfortable for students with disability, there's more room for improvement as far as accessibility is concerned. To help achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which pushes for access to education and equal rights for all, the University of Cape Coast would need to make the campus more disability friendly. Spencer Kobnabuati-Mensah, TV3 News, Cape Coast.
And you know, Cape Coast is the citadel of education in the Republic of Ghana. Let's now go on to the conversation with Kofi Asare, is the member of the Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition. Chief, good morning one more time.
Good morning,
this is a success story. How does it pan out to you?
I think it is a good step. It's that very, very important first step in ensuring that our institutions are disability friendly. as you may be aware, Ghana is a signatory to the SDGs, and we've committed to ensuring that there is inclusiveness and equity in the provision of education and educational opportunities.
Right.
And so, if at the tertiary level, efforts are being made to ensure that students with disabilities are actually being mainstream, or if the school environment at the tertiary level is being made conducive to enhance the participation of students with learning disabilities or physical disabilities,
Right.
then obviously is that right step that we need to take, which is being actually taken by the university. Yeah.
Do we see government making headway, because we've been having this conversation for a long time, do we see headway in government's commitment towards ensuring inclusivity?
Inclusive education, I must admit, in as much as it is a necessity, it is a very expensive venture.
Okay.
I'm saying so because if you look at the percentage of people or students with various disabilities, about 2%.
Right.
Okay. Now, if you look at the range of disabilities that occasion such students,
Okay.
it ranges from students with physical disabilities to mental disabilities to learning difficulties.
Right.
There's a wide range of disabilities, and ensuring that all these people with these deficits
Okay.
are brought on board and have equal access to educational opportunities
Okay.
is not an easy task. However, it is also not an impossible task. What we have seen in Ghana here is that normally you find that there's a good policy, very nice policy on paper. Then it is launched. We were here when the inclusive education policy was launched in 2016. Yeah. But if you go to the schools now, especially at the basic and secondary level, or if you go to the basic schools and find out the extent to which the policy is being implemented, you will begin to find that the bottom line is resources. If you go to the special education division of the Ghana Education Service, that entity is directly responsible for implementing most of the inclusive education interventions, especially those that have to do with disabilities. Okay. But that division is woefully, in fact, it is the most underfunded division in the Ghana Education Service.
Let's talk about funding some more. And the district assemblies are supposed to have a certain percentage, some 3%, sorry about that, for persons with disability. That should include education. Do we see that inculcated in the budget for the district assemblies? Do we see it?
You see, it is not as easy as it is. The system, the current architecture of our educational system, especially our basic education system as it is now, makes it difficult for the district assembly to play certain key roles.
How so?
Because the Ghana Education Service has a headquarters,
Okay.
a regional headquarters, and a district headquarters.
Right.
And the district director responds to the director general and not the district assembly.
Okay.
So it becomes quite difficult for you to expect the assembly to play a certain pioneering role in basic education where they are not directly they're directly responsible for providing education in the district.
But if you find schools within the district, those schools will be under the purview of the district chief executive.
No. Education in the district currently is under the management of the Ghana Education Service.
Okay.
The district director. The district director does not respond to or report to the district executive nor the district coordinating director.
Okay.
They report to the regional director and then to the director general in Accra. And so there is some incongruous relationship in terms of accountability and responsibility. It is difficult for you to hold district assemblies responsible for educational outcomes when you haven't given them the power. One, to recruit.
What power are we talking about? Are you talking about the mode of instruction, the pedagogical approach, or we're talking, because if there's a problem, for example, at the Kanda Estate cluster of schools regarding sanitation, I won't go to the Ghana Education Service. I'll go to the sub-metro to ask a question about it. Are we talking about assigning teachers, classrooms, and the rest, which is what you're talking about? Because the school, as I know it, will be under the purview of the district assembly. Perhaps I'm wrong.
I'm talking about the power to take decisions.
Okay.
As the system remains now, decision-making power rests with the Ghana Education Service headquarters,
Okay.
and not the district assembly. He who takes decisions must account. I can't hold you accountable for decisions that you do not take.
Okay.
That is what I'm talking about.
But if you take decisions and it impacts my district, I should be able to have a conversation with you and ask you questions.
No. Well, you can ask me questions, but I am not responsible because the outcomes of your decision cannot be attributed to me.
How do you solve this?
The solution is that we have an education law which says that devolve the management of education to the districts.
Okay.
Let the district directors of education or the GES office in the district
Okay.
report to the district assembly through their system.
Okay.
So that education will be devolved, decisions will be taken at the district level. Then we can hold district assemblies responsible for educational outcomes. But I'm coming to the point.
Okay.
You mentioned that why won't DAs, that district assemblies,
Right.
use a part of the common fund,
Absolutely.
the one for the disabled
The
people,
3%.
exactly,
Okay.
to support children with disabilities
Right.
in the schools.
Right.
It is not for the district assembly to determine what that money should be used for. It is for the persons with disabilities association
Okay.
in the district.
Okay.
Okay, they determine their priority.
Okay.
So the law says that there must exist an association of PWDs in
Right.
the district, and then they should have a priority
Okay.
documented. Based on that priority, the assembly, they have to convince the assembly that this is a priority we want to do that will enhance our social economy, that will enhance every aspect of their existence in the district. Based on that, the funds will be released for them. So that decision will have to be taken by the PWDs. But then,
But then in assessing those funds, the Federation or Association, whichever it is, of persons with disability, would have to come for an interview at the district assembly to justify why they need X amount of money for Y project, correct?
Exactly.
So if you come and the district holds it dear to its heart to have some funds for persons with children with disability in schools, and they have a dialogue, they certainly can have a dialogue around the table, can't they?
they can. It is not impossible. There must be consensus. Okay. The initiative will have to be taken either by the PWDs or the assembly. But these initiatives, you see, what we are discussing is way beyond students with physical disabilities. Way beyond that. Many times, unfortunately, when we mention children with learning disabilities, we quickly think about people who are physically challenged. No. That is a very myopic view of a very big issue.
That's immediate. For example, this young lady at West African Secondary
School. It is immediate because
it is
immediate because it is easily visible, right?
It is immediate because it affects the future of many, including her.
No,
not just visible.
I'll be honest. It is the compelling aspect of that is because it is visible.
Absolutely.
Yes. Probably about only 5% of disabilities are visible.
So she's getting ready to write her WASI, for example. There's no special software. We know Miss Bedue and how she's been able to, make a mark globally. For this little girl at Miss Agbenyega at West African Secondary School, Portia Gabo has been following the story. We don't know if, we have a software yet for her to be able to write her SSC or WASI easily so. But she's gone through all the 3 years of education. That certainly should be of concern to you, shouldn't it?
Of course it is. It is not her situation per se, but all children with cerebral palsy. Because we know that 1 in every 300 children in Ghana here has cerebral palsy.
Right.
So it is not something very, very, very abstract. It is something we are living with.
Right.
And it is a medical condition. It is a brain condition. So the approach should be both the medical aspect and then also the educational support aspect. Obviously, she will need some support to be able to write the exam. I am told that there was a promise or there was a commitment made by government.
Right, following the story to develop a software.
Yes.
Do we know what progress we have made? We're trying to get on the phone line to speak with Madame Amina Echan of the Ghana Education Service.
I think Madame Amina Echan is the one who will be in the right position to tell us.
But you work with the coalition. Has it come to your attention?
I mentioned to you earlier that the most underfunded division of the Ghana Education Service is the Special Education Division.
Right.
Okay? Over the past 15 years. That has been our approach to special education. And so if you
And
go to
maybe
that
explaining
department,
why.
if you go to that department, you realize that all the operations, almost all, are always supported by NGOs.
Have they been explaining why, government been explaining why they are not committed to spending much on
Obviously,
special unit?
Well, we all know, we know.
Mental, physical education.
We know that in the past decade, our governments have been fixated with access and not quality. We know that. We know that governments are happy when they announce outcomes on numbers.
Okay.
So it's always about access, you know, but you only talk about people with learning disabilities when you begin to talk about quality. You begin to talk about how inclusive is your access.
Okay.
To what extent, you know, then you talk about equity and inclusion.
Right.
Equity and inclusion is now being put on the front burner for the first time.
Okay.
It has been a relegated issue. It wasn't a priority. Okay. But it is time for government to walk the talk. There's now a policy. The policy was championed by development partners.
Right.
We know that. It was
Right.
championed by
We do.
development partners.
Yes, sure.
Everything is championed by DPs, right? Now, when DPs champion policies, okay, governments have to demonstrate ownership of them and then fund them, and not to expect INGOs and the same DPs to fund the government departments and agencies responsible for personalizing the policies.
Is government being irresponsible in this instance?
I'm not saying so, but what I'm saying is that
But
you can't compare.
if the
You
conditions
can't
are
compare.
there, if development partners will come and do research, develop a policy, push for it, advocate for it, district assemblies cannot be directly in charge, the special unit is not properly funded, all of these issues exist, and the problems are staring us in the face, and we're only paying lip service. Can we say government is being irresponsible as far as inclusive education is concerned?
Governments in the past and present have been irresponsive. They have not been adequately responsive to the needs of persons with disabilities.
Okay.
I mean, 715. What happened to the Persons with Disability Act? Act 715. It was passed over 12 years ago.
Right.
Even the LI is still not in place.
Absolutely.
But we know that the LI for the Officer of the Special Prosecutor and LI for other laws that were passed just a month ago have been rushed, right? Exactly, yes. So if the LI for the Persons with Disability Act, Act 715, is still a mirage after more than 12 years of its passage, then it tells you the extent to which our governments in the past and present have the political will to support persons with disabilities. But the point I want to make here is that, can you compare the approach to supporting special education or children with learning disabilities to the free senior high school? Can you?
Tell me.
You can't. The difference is that one is a policy that was hatched, that was conceived by government. Okay.
That's a manifesto promise.
Exactly. So it is owned. The ownership is unquestionable. The commitment is unquestionable because it was hatched, it was conceived, homegrown. But when it comes to most of the educational policies that are actually they are actually initiated by development partners, because it is a reminder to us that you committed to SDG 4. SDG or
Goal 4.
It started from the MDG era. MDG era before the SDG. So you couldn't meet this target under the MDG. Now we are going to SDG. So you need to do this. For those ones, you find that when those policies are passed, the ownership and the political will to actually resource the policies and make it operational is normally lacking.
What do you say to those who, your critics, who say that perhaps you have not mounted a lot of pressure on government, Special Mothers Project, the Coalition on Education, and all the bodies, the stakeholders, you have not mounted enough pressure on government to say, bring this to bear? Because in the case of free SHS, you find that every single stakeholder is saying, well, send it to my do it and let's see. But in this case, you have not mounted enough pressure. What do you say?
I think I must be honest to admit that, to an extent, very little advocacy has gone into inclusive education in Ghana. I mentioned that it wasn't a priority. I didn't say that it wasn't a priority for only government, even for CSOs.
Okay.
There were very few people, organizations that were doing frontline policy advocacy for PWDs or for that matter, inclusive education. But now that we've been able to get to the point where there's a policy, in the context of the operational plan of the policy, civil society organizations like NEC should engage government and put pressure on government to make sure that that policy is implemented. I know there are other very pressing, policies that need to be implemented by government. The fear is that because issues of disability affect about 1.8% of children in school.
Okay.
You know, people normally think that you are making noise because how many people have diphtheria? How many people have dyslexia? How many people have dysgraphia? You know, how many people have difficulty in learning, reading, and writing? You know, but even if 2% of our children in school have difficulties in writing, reading, and doing arithmetics, it is an issue because you find that most of these people are in the rural areas.
So you've tried dialogue for many years. It doesn't seem to work. Will you try demonstrations? Will you go to court?
No, we haven't gotten to that point yet.
Why?
Gotten to the
Why
point where
after 10, 12 years you haven't gotten to that point?
those years there was no policy. The dialogue was to push through for a policy to be developed, and we achieved that late 2016.
Mr. Asare, the flow is that you have a law, okay? Out of the law emanates policy. Out of policy emanates implementation. That's the order. You have had the law for 12 years. You have had all of this for a long time. If the policy is there and yet you don't have an LI under the policy, how do you activate your rights under the law?
What delayed the rights of disabled, not only to education, but in general development, social development, what delayed that right, okay, was the LI. The strategy of waiting for LIs to be developed before aggressive advocacy is embarked on, I think hasn't worked well.
Right.
It wasn't worth it waiting all this while for the LI. And as we speak now, the LI, there are many laws in Ghana without LIs. Okay. There are many laws, even the Education Act, the current Act 778, okay, the education law. Right. Where's the LI? There's no LI. So if we knew that we didn't need an LI to do any aggressive advocacy for PWDs, we wouldn't have waited all this while. But what I'm saying is that in the absence of an LI, we've been able to get political commitment in the form of a policy, which is the inclusive education policy, which has clearly spelled out benchmarks.
Which policy is not being implemented on many fronts? For example,
it is a new policy.
In the matter of creche and kindergarten education, for example,
yes,
it's not been taken care of. Nearly everybody gets up and starts at kindergarten, but we know those are the most critical years of a child, the formative years. The basic, if you get the foundation wrong, everything is wrong. You go to most of these nursery schools and kindergarten schools, and there are stark illiterates who are teaching the children how to read and write. That's a disaster waiting to happen.
In early childhood, we know that you know how early childhood.
So they go to school. They go to school. They say a few rhymes. They eat. They bath for them. They sleep.
They don't even go to school because government does not run creches. The basic system starts from the age 4.
Yes.
So until you are 4, you have to find a private school to attend.
Okay.
You understand?
Right.
I did a survey from Somenya to Adenta. I couldn't find one government nursery. All the creches there are privately owned.
And this policy that you're talking
and they are
about,
expensive.
this law, this policy doesn't solve this problem. And you think that the policy is right?
No, this inclusive policy doesn't directly solve this in the sense that the inclusive.
But this is the problem. This is a big problem.
No, there are other policies that take care of this.
Okay.
Because in the past we have put the management of creches and those things under the Department of Social Affairs. Remember the 31st December days?
Right.
Yeah. And then there is a sudden migration. I mean, there's a gradual migration of all those early childhood care education systems onto the juniors. Okay. So now, for instance, nurseries, kindergarten 1, kindergarten 2, they are part of the basic education setup.
Kofi Asare, thank you very much indeed for your time. We'll have some more conversation. Kofi Asare is with the Ghana National Coalition on Education Campaign Coalition. Thank you very much, Kofi, for your time. We're grateful. This conversation has been made possible by Star Ghana with funding from the European Union and Danida.